The shadows follow me. That's what Emma whispered to herself as she stepped into the narrow alley, behind the abandoned theater. The moon barely lit the path, and the walls on either side seemed to bend inward, pressing down on her like the world itself was holding its breath. Every step she took echoed against the cracked bricks, yet somewhere behind her, a soft scrape of movement answered in perfect rhythm. Emma spun around, flashlight trembling in her hands, but the alley was empty. Only darkness stared back. And yet she could feel it, something unseen, something waiting. Emma had come to the city to meet a friend, but when she got lost trying to take a shortcut, she found herself in the maze of alleys downtown. The streets were quiet, unnaturally quiet, as if the city itself had disappeared. Buildings loomed high above, their windows dark and lifeless. The rain had just stopped, leaving puddles that reflected flickering neon signs from streets far behind her. As she walked, the air grew colder, carrying a faint smell of smoke and decay. The sound of dripping water echoed from somewhere deep in the alley. Every time she took a step forward, a shadow moved in her periphery, quick and fleeting, vanishing when she tried to look directly at it. At first, she tried to convince herself it was just her imagination. Alleyways always play tricks, she thought. But the feeling of being watched intensified with every step. Her flashlight flickered, briefly plunging the alley into complete darkness. When it returned, Emma noticed footprints in the damp ground that weren't her small, ragged and uneven, leading deeper into the maze. She froze, realizing that the prints didn't match the stride of a normal person. They were wrong, twisted, like someone or something was following her just out of sight. Emma's heart pounded as she continued, the alley narrowing further. The brick walls seemed to close in, each step echoing louder than the last. Shadows shifted along the walls, forming shapes that resembled figures hunched over, peering at her from the darkness. She could feel a presence behind her, moving with her, mimicking her steps. Panic rose in her chest. She wanted to run, but the alley twisted and turned, leading her in circles, as if it were alive and keeping her trapped. Suddenly, a cold wind whipped through the narrow passage, carrying whispers that Emma couldn't understand. They were faint at first, then grew louder, forming fragmented words. Go, stay, follow, leave. The shadows stretched and lunged across the wet bricks, forming dark, human-like shapes. One shadow in particular followed her closely, keeping pace perfectly with her every movement. It had no features, only an outline darker than the night itself. Emma spun around again, shining her flashlight directly at it, but the beam passed through the shadow as if it were made of smoke. She gasped, realizing she wasn't alone and that the alley didn't want her to leave. Desperate for an escape, Emma tried turning down a side passage, but the walls shifted, leading her back to the same narrow alley. Every path she chose was blocked by darkness, by twisted shadows waiting for her. The dripping sound grew louder, closer, as if something or someone was following her from behind a corner. Emma's breaths came in sharp gasps, echoing unnaturally in the confined space. Then she heard footsteps, but they weren't her own. Slow, deliberate, dragging along the bricks. She froze. Her flashlight flickered, then stabilized, revealing a figure ahead. It was pale, tall, and thin, with empty black eyes that seemed to pierce through her. Emma stepped back, heart racing. "Who's there?" She shouted, but only silence answered. The figure didn't move, but the shadows around it twisted and writhed, reaching toward her like tendrils of smoke. She turned to run, but the alley floor seemed to stretch unnaturally, elongating the path in front of her. Every step forward brought the figure closer, yet it never moved from its spot. It was the shadows that moved, flowing like water around her, pulling her attention and energy toward them. A sudden cold hand brushed against her shoulder. Emma screamed, spinning around. No one was there. Only the shadows, dancing along the walls, creeping closer and whispering her name. She stumbled forward, tripping over a loose brick. Her flashlight skidded across the ground, casting wild, frantic light over the alley. In the brief illumination, she saw dozens of faces in the shadows, pale and twisted, mouths open in silent screams. They seemed to be trapped inside the darkness, waiting for someone to join them. Emma scrambled to pick up her flashlight, shaking uncontrollably, realizing that every shadow in the alley was alive, watching, and hungry for her fear. Emma ran blindly, taking random turns down narrow passages, trying to escape. The shadows followed relentlessly, merging and splitting, always keeping pace. Every door she tried to push open led only to more darkness, more twisting hallways. The alley seemed endless, a labyrinth designed to trap anyone foolish enough to enter. Her mind raced. How could she escape something that didn't exist in the normal world? Each turn, each step, only drew her deeper into the maze, as if the alley itself was feeding off her panic and terror. As she approached what looked like the end of the alley, she stumbled into a large, open courtyard. Broken crates and rusted barrels littered the ground. A faint glow came from a distant window, revealing an old warehouse at the end of the space. Emma thought she could escape through it, but the shadows surged around her suddenly, thickening like smoke, swirling into figures that blocked her path. They didn't move like humans. They flowed, stretching across the ground, wrapping around objects and walls. They whispered, a chorus of distorted voices saying her name, beckoning her closer. Panic consumed her entirely. Emma's breathing became frantic, her legs weak with exhaustion. She felt the shadows touching her skin, cold and clammy. One shadow leapt at her from the wall. She ducked just in time, crashing against the rusted barrel. The alley and courtyard became alive with motion. Old signs swung violently, metal doors banged, and the ground seemed to shift beneath her feet. The shadows multiplied, twisting together to form a towering, indistinct figure. Its black eyes glowed faintly, and it moved with unnatural speed toward her. She turned and ran for the warehouse, bursting through the door. Inside, the space was enormous, filled with old machinery and crates stacked to the ceiling. Her flashlight illuminated ghostly graffiti on the walls. Warnings, symbols, and dozens of small handprints pressed into the dusty surface. Every sound echoed loudly, amplified, making her feel even smaller and more trapped. As she ran, the shadows followed, slipping under doors, around corners and through cracks in the walls. They never stopped. They never blinked. They never gave her a chance. Emma found a staircase leading to a small office above the warehouse floor. She climbed frantically, each step groaning under her weight. When she reached the top, she slammed the door shut behind her and pressed her back against it, gasping for breath. The shadows swirled beneath the door, forming vague humanoid shapes that scratched and knocked, trying to break in. The room was empty, save for an old desk and a broken chair. The faint glow from a window revealed the empty courtyard outside. But when she glanced back at the walls, dozens of shadowy faces pressed against them, staring silently with glowing eyes. Emma realized the alley had followed her here. It was not just outside. It was inside, in every corner, every reflection, every shadow of light. She searched frantically for anything to defend herself. Her hands found an old metal pipe behind the desk. Gripping it tightly, she waited. The shadows began to coalesce, forming an enormous, twisted figure that seemed to float above the ground. Its whispers grew louder, speaking in a language she didn't understand but somehow recognized. It was calling her, claiming her. The figure extended a long, shadowy arm toward her. Emma swung the pipe, but it passed straight through, hitting nothing. The shadows laughed, silent, mocking, overwhelming. Panic surged. She knew she could not fight them. The shadows surged, filling the room, wrapping around her, merging into one dense, dark mass. Emma felt herself lifted, carried upward, toward the ceiling. She screamed, but the sound was swallowed by the dark. Everything went black. When she opened her eyes, she was back at the entrance of the alley, standing perfectly still, with the same flickering neon sign above her head. The shadows had vanished, leaving her trembling. But when she looked down, she noticed new footprints in the dust around hers, and dozens of smaller, twisted prints leading away into the darkness. The alley had marked her. It would follow her forever. Outside, the city seemed normal again. Cars passed on the street, lights glowed warmly in the distance, and passers-by walked unaware of what lurked just beyond the alley walls. Emma stumbled to the street, gasping, but when she glanced back at the alley, she saw shadows moving inside, waiting, whispering. And if anyone listened carefully, just as she had, they would hear the faintest voice in the darkness say, "The shadows follow me." And now, they follow you. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more terrifying tales every week.